Welcome to the Grow Your Independent Consulting Business podcast. I'm Melissa Lieberman, a fellow IC and business coach. On this podcast, I teach you to become a consistently booked independent consultant without becoming a pushy salesperson or working 24/7. If I can do it, you can too. Listen on to find out how. Welcome to episode 90 of the Grow Your Independent Consulting Business podcast. I'm so happy you're here. And if you were listening last week, I gave you a little teaser. I was going to share something with you this week that I, at the time of recording, hadn't done yet in my business. And today I get to tell you all about it for the perspective of something you can repeat in your business that I recently did that was an incredible game changer for me. So I cannot wait to dive in today to the topic, which is having a corporate retreat for you as an independent consultant. We're going to dive all into talking about corporate retreats and why I personally think, after having had this experience last weekend, what an incredible game changer and impact this concept is for my business. And I know for sure it will be for yours as well. I know that because of the experience that I had based on, and I'll share that with you today. And also I have other independent consultants that I've talked with about this who have had their own version of a retreat and how much of a difference it made for them. So today we're going to talk about having a corporate retreat for your business, what it was like for me to have one, what I recommend for your own business to have a corporate retreat, why you should do it, what not to do when you have one. And we're going to talk all things corporate retreat. So basically, at the time of recording, I think it's been a week since I started my corporate retreat and went on my corporate retreat. And I cannot wait to share all of these details with you. When I started talking with my family, my husband and my kids, who are 12, 9, and 7, and telling them that I was planning to do this, they were laughing at me. They're like, "What do you mean corporate retreat? It's only you." And you know what? I pushed back on them. Like, look, I'm running a corporation here. It might just be me and some virtual assistant and a podcast producer and the people who support me. So it might not be the standard definition of a corporation, but I'm telling you, when you think about your business like a corporation, you show up and treat it so differently and get such different results than when you're thinking about it just being you. So anyway, if your family makes fun of you like mine did, just push back on them. We are having a corporate retreat, even if it's just for one person. So with that, let's dive in to today's agenda. We're going to talk about all things hosting a corporate retreat for your independent consulting business. First, I'm going to talk about why have a retreat. How can this be such a game changer for you in your consulting business? Then I'll share with you a lot of details about my own personal experience having a retreat. And then we'll wrap up with strategies that you can leverage to schedule and host and attend and take value from your own corporate retreat. So that's what we're talking about today. Before we get started, though, I made a checklist for you. So a lot of the concepts that we're talking about today, as well as other things that I don't have time to go into in a lot of detail, I put them all into a PDF for you. So it's called the Independent Consultants Corporate Retreat Checklist. It will give you everything you need to plan your retreats, in terms of, what you want to get out of it and what to remember to do as you're planning it. It has a checklist on what to do while you're at the retreat so that you don't lose sight of some of the concepts that I'll share with you today. And then finally, what to do as you're wrapping up your retreat and pre-entry from your retreat so that you don't lose that momentum that you create. So go download that checklist so you've got all of this wrapped into one. Both what I'm going over today, as well as a lot of additional tips and strategies for you in that checklist. And you can get it at melissalieberman.com/retreat-checklist. And we'll put that link in the show notes as well. All right. Also, before we dive into the specifics here of our agenda, I did want to tell you that in the show notes, I'm going to put some pictures of my retreat in there, just so you can kind of have a visual of what I'm talking about today. So Go check that out as well. You can see all the books. I brought 62 books with me on this retreat, and I'll tell you why in a minute. So anyway, go check out those pictures also. Okay, so with that, let's just start with the basics. Why have a retreat, a corporate retreat? For me, I really debated back and forth about this, and I'll tell you why I decided to have the corporate retreat when I share my story here in a minute. But why have a corporate retreat? Think back to the time where you were in corporate and you might have gone away to some kind of a retreat or a sales club. You've probably heard that term. If you met a certain sales quota, then you got to go to quote unquote club. You may not be a salesperson, but a lot of times they brought those of us who were supporting the sales cycle in some way. I know for me, I was a subject matter expert who would often go on sales calls. And so I would be eligible to go to sales clubs. So you may be in the same kind of boat, or maybe you went away to some kind of an executive planning session for several days. Think back to the time in corporate where you went away. You got away from the day-to-day. You got away from your desk. You got away from your office. And you were just put in a different environment. You had a different schedule. You had different people to talk to, or maybe it was the same people, but in a different context, right? And it just brought up, I know for me, having done that so many times, I would go to those types of events, whether you call them a retreat or an offsite or whatever you want to call it, and go to those events and have such motivation coming back from it. Really just time to get perspective. Why am I doing this? Time to think about things differently because you're not distracted by the day-to-day, and then to create that motivation and that momentum. Can you think back to a time where you were at one of those offsites or at a retreat or at a sales club or some version of that, and how you felt going there? Honestly, for me, especially when I first started going to those kinds of offsites, I felt important. I was selected to go to this thing, right? Whether I was on the executive team and going to one for the first time, or having made a sales club for the first time, or honestly, sometimes I would just get vacation bonuses from the CEO. And I remember going once to Mexico with other executives. I think there were 2 or 3 of us with our spouses or significant others. And it was just basically like an incentive kind of a thing. Whatever it was, if you can think back to those times when you've done that over the course of your career and what you took away from it, even that amount of like, look, I'm kind of important here, or what I did was impactful and I got this trip as a result of it, or I got this experience as a result of it. Think back to those times for yourself and how you might have, shown up differently as a result of that. That's what we're talking about here. Why have a corporate retreat? And I'll go into this in more detail as I share my story, but for you to take a step outside of your business for however long it is, mine was 4 days, 2 or 3 days, whatever it is, take a step outside of your business, recognize yourself for what you've accomplished so far. Even if it doesn't feel like it's quote unquote enough, what have you accomplished? Even the mere fact that you have the courage to go out on your own and operate as an independent consultant and create your own business and generate your own clients, even if you feel like you haven't made the amount of money that you want to have made yet, or even if you making as big of an impact with the type of work that you're doing yet, whatever the reason is, it doesn't matter. You've accomplished so much in even having the courage to do this. I talk to so many people who want to be an independent consultant and are so afraid. You've taken that leap. So even if you have very little to point to in terms of revenue yet, you've accomplished so much. So a corporate retreat can be such an important way to recognize what you've accomplished so far. And it gives you that space to think. It gives you a forum for you to start making plans for the coming year, quarter, or even month. And it gives you that sense of importance, that sense of, you know what, I am someone who is making this happen for myself. Just like I was describing to you a minute ago, when you get invited to one of those sales clubs or to an offsite or to even a training that other people hadn't been invited to when you were in corporate, that kind of sense of gravitas that comes with it. Get yourself into that zone so you can be so much more effective as an independent consultant. That's one of the reasons alone to have this kind of corporate retreat. So hopefully I have caught your attention now of why you might want to consider having a corporate retreat. And I'm going to give you some more details here as we dive into it. But I wanted to make sure that you know why this isn't not just about my business. I'm going to share you my own examples so that you can bring an idea to life for yourself in your retreat. But I wanted to start off with why have a corporate retreat so that you can really be thinking about what I'm about to share with you from the perspective of my experience and apply it to you and your business. So again, we're working on creating that space to think for yourself, that ability to step away from the day-to-day and create a forum for yourself to make plans and to dream about what it is that you want to accomplish in your business in the next 3 to 5 years. And think outside the box about how you might be able to accomplish more than you ever have in your business next year, for example, with less time. Those kinds of things. This gives you that dedicated space to be able to start problem solving in that way and dreaming in that way so that you're able to create a business that you aren't even maybe right now even realizing is possible for yourself. So that's why we're talking about this today for you, is to think about using this corporate retreat strategy that I'm going to share with you today as one of those mechanisms that's key and central to you and your business. Okay, so hopefully I've convinced you that this is something that can be really valuable for you in your business. After I explain to you my experience going on a corporate retreat, then we'll wrap up with some more strategies on how you can apply this, what I've shared with you today, to your own business. So let's start off, and I'll just tell you the story of how this retreat came to be and what it was like and what I took away from it and the lessons learned. So my experience, where this all started is I was sharing with my own coach the fact that I had hit some goals in my business, actually almost 2 months early. And she was really excited for me. And my strength is not celebrating what I've accomplished. My strength is making new goals after I've accomplished something, or even before I've fully accomplished something, to like keep myself going, you know? And so she was really challenging me. Take a step back, really appreciate what you've accomplished, and how are you going to celebrate that? And my initial inclination was, you know what? She keeps bugging me about this. I think I'm just going to take my family out to dinner and check the box. I'll tell her I did it and we'll just keep moving because I just don't really like celebrating things. I like setting new goals and working toward them. So anyway, she ended up saying to me as part of this sort of back and forth about how to celebrate, she said something that really clicked. She asked me, if you were to think about this, however you want to celebrate hitting these goals in a way that reflected your company values, what would it be? And that really got me thinking. And I think also it just took me out of the equation a little bit and made it more about my company, even though it's, you know, me and the company, but it created a little bit of separation. And it got me really thinking, what are my company values? And so I started thinking about it as I'm the CEO. I want to do something for my employees in a way that celebrates them and in a way that motivates them and creates momentum. Again, I'm the employees, right? I'm the coach in my business, just like you're the consultant in your business. I'm the sales rep in my business, just like you're the sales rep in your business. I'm the person who delivers in my business, just like you are. And I'm the CEO running the business and keeping all those versions of me motivated and on track, which isn't easy all the time, as you know for yourself, right? So as I started thinking about it this way, and I would highly recommend you think about it this way too, as we're going through this, of how would you want to celebrate that, the accomplishment of whatever the goal might be, and how would you want to motivate your employees for next year? And as I started thinking about it in that way, it really dawned on me, I am going to have a corporate retreat, just like an offsite. I am going to have an offsite with myself and all the versions of me who are running this business and really give myself some space, especially from working from home, I'm going to give myself some physical space as well as some mental space to appreciate what I've accomplished and really be able to think about next year and the next several years from more of a clean sheet perspective. So that's how I decided in the first place that I was going to have this corporate retreat. At one point, my brain said to me, why spend any money? We could do this at home. You shouldn't spend money that your whole family could spend to go on a vacation. All of these arguments, right? But you know what? I said to myself, this is not something that you just accomplish in the same environment that you already have been in. And I know for sure that you're the type of business owner who can make this into an experience that creates a return on investment. And so that's why your brain may be throwing that at you too. Like, why spend the money to go on a corporate retreat? Why not just do some flavor of this at home? And that's what the answer was for me, that I know that I wanted to have that physical and mental space to make this experience worth the investment. I also decided that I wanted to spend 3 days. It ended up being 3 nights and 4 days, that this wasn't just a one night thing, that I needed to be able to go for a few days for this retreat and, really dive into it full force versus kind of a one night check the box sort of an experience. So what I did after deciding I was going to have this corporate retreat in order to initially it was to fulfill my coach's challenge, but it became all about a way to reflect my company's values. And so what I did next is I started planning, obviously. So from that planning perspective, I'll just share with you, I was trying to find something local. I didn't want to fly anywhere. I wanted to be able to drive over to wherever I chose within driving distance. And so I just started researching a bunch of VRBO. I Googled presidential suite in Colorado Springs, where I live. And the Broadmoor is a resort that's really famous here. That would probably be the best place to go. And I ended up finding something different. It's called Garden of the Gods Resort, where I went, but it was just this spa-centric space that had a little casitas that you could rent. And I thought, that's perfect. I just want like a big table where I can spread out all my stuff. I don't want to feel like I'm in a hotel room. I want to feel like this is really something that's special, something that a space where I love being in, and that I'm not just kind of like hiding out in a hotel, hiding from my family. So that's how I ended up choosing the spot, is based on how I wanted this experience to feel and what kind of vibe I wanted with it. And, just thinking about it from a fun perspective back to the company values that I wanted to reflect in this as well. And then I started getting really into it. And I thought about, what is it like when you go on a corporate retreat or a corporate offsite? You get like a swag bag, you get a bag of some fun things when you get there that you wouldn't buy for yourself, that the company's giving you, and that make your time there more comfortable, and also are like, things that you can bring home as a memento. So that's what I did. I made myself a gift bag. In the gift bag, I had, a bottle of wine. I had some spa credits. I love collecting these little Unikitty Legos. It sounds kind of childish, but they're really fun. So I got myself a few of those that are like the minifigs that you open and it's a surprise what's inside. I got that, just some really fun things, kind of childish things, and also really, higher end things like the spa credit. So that's what I started doing, and then kind of got the juices flowing. And then I started planning. I created my objectives for the retreat. What did I want to walk away with when I left there? What was on the agenda? And you know what? I started falling into a pattern that I always do, which is like, okay, no one's going to be interrupting me. I could get all of these things done. And I started making this huge list of all these things that I could get done that had been, quote unquote, hanging out on my to-do list forever. How great would it feel to come back with all of that checked off? And then I realized that is not the purpose of this retreat. This retreat is here for me to have space to think. This is here for me to think and vision out and dream for the next several years of what I want my business to be. It is not for me to just go somewhere and hide away from my family for several days and pound out my to-do lists. So I scratched all of that and I came up with this agenda, which I share with you in that download, the retreat checklist, which is setting the objectives of why I'm here, why this is a good investment of my time and money for my business. What are the high quality questions that I wanted to answer? Like 3 or 4 of them I came up with. If I leave this retreat having answered these 3 or 4 questions, it's going to be a needle mover in my business. And then I made some self-agreements with myself. I know myself. I want to be able to check off a bunch of things. I want to feel like I accomplished things sort of from a volume perspective. And so my normal self would say, well, you only answered 2 or 3 questions as part of this, or you only created a 2023 plan as part of this retreat. That's not good enough. So what I did as part of this planning process, and I'll share this with you in that retreat checklist, is that I made agreements with myself in advance that I wasn't going to do that I wasn't going to judge how much I was getting done or not getting done, that I wasn't going to judge myself if I watch Netflix or not, like none of that I was truly here to create space for myself to think and to create some creativity for myself, to create some higher level thinking than is normal on a day-to-day basis when you're distracted by so many other things. And I wasn't going to judge myself for what I did or didn't do, or even what I left with. That part alone, that space to basically not have any judgment, was incredibly valuable. The other thing that was really valuable as part of this was the anticipation of it. As I got going in the planning phase, I started getting so excited. It was kind of like, a holiday was coming up, or even a vacation was coming up, or something big in your business that you're really excited for. That's what this was. It created that anticipation, which was also so beneficial for the couple weeks beforehand. So anyway, after all of that research, I made the plans to go to this resort. I ended up deciding to go for 3 nights and 4 days. I could drive over there, so it was perfect. I could do a few things for my kids that day that I left, and then head over to the hotel, bring some great food with me, and settle in. And so that's what I did. So after checking in and walking into this hotel room, which was, like I said, a casita, so it was so much more than a hotel room. It had this incredible fireplace, indoor fireplace, and an outdoor fireplace. As I walked in, something happened that I didn't expect. And this is the first of several things that I didn't expect as part of this retreat. I just felt so different. It was strange just going there without my family, but in a way of feeling like the CEO of a business who has permission, even though I gave it to myself, who has permission to go do something like this. That alone made such a change, a shift in the way I was thinking about things. Without having done anything yet, just walking into that hotel room and knowing that I planned this for myself and that I invested in this for myself and that this was something that my company does and values, was shifted, just made an energetic shift in me. And so during this retreat and over the course of those 3 nights and 4 days, I spent the time going back and forth between some rewards I was giving myself, like that time in the spa, an amazing coffee or several coffees in the morning, that wine I shared with you, some music, a little bit of Netflix, just a lot of relaxing and creating space and thinking about this as I'm the employee who's so lucky their CEO sent them on this reward trip. And then I would also shift gears and go into the CEO mode and do what I call super thinking. I learned this from one of my coaches, super thinking, which is writing down a really high value question. I brought these with me, these high value questions that I really wanted the answer to, that I've been working on getting the answers to, some for weeks, some for months, some for quarters, and really giving myself the space to sit there and next to a fire and just writing out and brainstorming all of the ideas that came to me. Questions like, if I could do anything in my business and it would be wildly successful, no matter what it was, what would it be? What would I want my business to look like in 5 years? If anything I chose would be wildly successful, what would it take to make my success inevitable? What am I afraid of That got some really interesting answers. Another one that got a really interesting answer, and I put these questions along with a lot of others into that retreat checklist for you, melissalieberman.com/retreat checklist. The question that got some really interesting answers in a way that I didn't expect was, how will I feel if I achieve my wildest dreams in my business? You would think that particular question would get some really fun answers. Like, I will feel amazing if I achieve these wildest dreams. I will feel so accomplished if I achieve my wildest dreams. I'll feel so much more secure if I achieve my wildest dreams. It didn't give me any of those answers. What it did give me was, if I achieve my wildest dreams, I'm going to feel so much more vulnerable, so much more kind of exposed to more people. That's so valuable to know, because that becomes a limiting factor in my business. So those are the types of questions that I asked myself, that I brought along with on the retreats, and I spent time answering over the course of those 4 days, coming back to over and over again. And those answers informed my plans for the next year, for the next quarter, for the next month, and helped me get such a strong baseline from which I made plans for next year that are so much bigger than I would have thought of had just staying in my office at home, so much more expansive than I would have just making a plan for my office or my kitchen table at home. And this whole experience over those 3 nights and 4 days just created this flood of ideas. And like I said, I don't even know if I can describe this to you well enough, but it was a different feeling physically in my body compared to when I went there. When I went there, I think I was feeling kind of run down, just very grounded in the day-to-day and the checklist and all the things that needed to happen. And even just walking into this casita and spending the time that I spent created a feeling of elevating myself into that CEO role, elevating myself into the version of me who's accomplished the goals that I want to accomplish, and not thinking about myself so in such a smaller, more myopic way. You might have had this experience. Like, think about it in a very simplistic way. If you go into a meeting and you're wearing a pair of jeans, it's like casual Friday, and you're wearing jeans and a nice top, maybe a button down or some kind of a blouse, versus going in a business suit. Even though it's just some clothes, they're all made of material. One makes you feel so much more elevated and powerful and important, and another makes you feel a little bit more laid back and casual and kind of, in the day-to-day. And I think that's a way to describe the difference here. It felt so much more elevating to me, having been in the space that I described to you, overlooking this local, I guess it's a state park, I think, the Garden of the Gods, these gorgeous rocks just jutting up from the earth, these gorgeous red rocks, and having this casita all to myself, which is such an elevated hotel room, and being able to spend that time that I gifted to myself, from the CEO down to the sales rep, all those versions of myself. It just created this feeling and this phenomenon for me that was incredibly transformational. Hopefully, I'm bringing this to life for you. So the result of these 3 nights and 4 days that I spent on that retreat, I'll wrap up here with the results and the lessons learned, and then share with you the strategies that you can use to put this into your business. But the result for me, having gone through this corporate retreat, were some that I expected. I expected to walk away with the objectives that I set when I booked the retreat. I expected to come away with a plan for next year that was for the whole year and broken down into quarters and into months, and just to have that line of sight into next year. I expected to have a vision, an updated vision for my business for the next 3 to 5 years. All of those things that I walked away with. But what I didn't expect, and was so doubling in value from this experience, was my ability to take a step back from what I'm used to in my routine and to identify old habits that I had fallen into, which usually fall into the category of doing things right versus doing things that are effective or simple, and seeing where I have overcomplicated things in my business and getting that perspective. So much more perspective than I anticipated. I had so many more breakthroughs than I anticipated, both on challenges that I had been trying to figure out in my business, things that I wanted to figure out, but I keep ruminating on them or trying to figure them out and not really getting to a good solution. I had so many breakthroughs on those things. And like I said, I truly came away from that. And even almost a week later, having felt transformed, like I was a different version of myself. So much more calm and grounded and clearer, and seeing and feeling that shift in priorities and feeling more like the CEO more of the time versus feeling more like the person in the business most of the time. And there's nothing wrong with either of those, but the ability to take that step back and have a vantage point to be able to think about my clients and the challenges that they're working on and trying to overcome, and new solutions that I would offer to them to help them get through the challenges where they've hit obstacles or might not be seeing their blind spots. That space to think about things in such a more expansive way for both myself and my business made this retreat invaluable to me, invaluable to the impact that it will have for my clients. And now, as I'm thinking about this and sharing this experience with you a few days later, I can tell you that this is not one of those experiences that has worn off like a vacation does. I truly feel that as part of this process, have been transformed as a business owner and a coach to that next level of myself. And I cannot wait to share all of those experiences with my clients and for them to come to life as part of my business. And that's what I would love for you to have also. So I know for a fact that I'll be doing this again, probably semi-annually. I think annually is not often enough. Quarterly might be too often. So I'm going to go for it next year. I planned it semi-annually, twice next year. But for you now, after hearing my description of why have one of these types of corporate retreats for yourself as an independent consultant, I challenge you to think about how could you implement that type of retreat to get that ability to take a step back, have a change of scenery, have the mental and physical space for you to be the business owner version of yourself, for you to be the CEO version of yourself, for you to think about your business from having more of that mental space and more time just to think about and brainstorm and answer high quality questions for your business, to take yourself out of the day-to-day. If you think about it from a return on investment perspective, there's so many different ways that that kind of corporate retreat can pay for itself several times over. How could you set up a retreat that reflects your company values the way I described to you in reflecting mine? And I challenge you to go set one of these for yourself by the end of the year, or we might have a little less than a month when you're listening to this at the time it goes live. There's plenty of time to do this year, or put it in your calendar in your budget for next year, or both. Go make this happen for yourself just from the perspective of creating that mental space so that you have time to think and time to vision and time to dream and time to problem solve as a business owner. And I can assure you that you'll come back from your retreat, no matter what it looks like, had such a different perspective than when you got there. So that's what I have for you today. I'm so excited to have shared this personal experience with you. And I hope that you'll go ahead and implement this for your business as well. Don't forget to go download that retreat checklist. We'll put the link in the show notes. It's at melissalieberman.com/retreat-checklist. And it gives you all of the checklists that I went over today in much more depth, as well as, things that you want to avoid so that you make the most of the time and money that you spend on this kind of retreat. And then also, just to wrap up, I offer one way to work with me, and that's through private coaching. If you're interested in learning more about what private coaching is and whether it would be a good fit for you and your business, you can book a call with me at consultmelissa.com. I look forward to meeting you on that call, hearing all about you and your business and your goals and your obstacles, helping you uncover blind spots, and then talking about mutually whether coaching would be a good fit or not. So be sure to go book your consultation for coaching, and I will see you again next week. Take care.
Thanks for joining me this week on the Grow Your Independent Consulting Business podcast. If you liked today's episode, I have 3 quick next steps for you. First, click subscribe on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to make sure you don't miss future episodes. Next, leave me a review in your podcast app so other independent consultants can find and benefit too. And finally, to put the ideas from today's episode into action, head over to melissalieberman.com for the show notes and more resources to help you grow your consulting practice from your first few projects into a full-fledged business. See you next week.